Wow, that's not a way to bring in a new year. I don't know what is. Unfortunately, a frustrating end for the Ohio State Buckeyes. If you look at the simulcast, literally as the ball in New York City in Times Square dropped down and hit 0 seconds to ring in the new year, Ohio State's game-winning field goal attempt against the defending national champion, Georgia Bulldogs, went wide left, and Ohio State's season came to a gut-wrenching end. We'll give you our post-game instant analysis from Mercedes-Benz Stadium here in Atlanta coming up next.
We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness. This is the question on a lot of people's minds here. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to Atlanta, Georgia. Final score tonight, 42-41. Unbelievable. The Georgia Bulldogs knock off the Ohio State Buckeyes. Season comes to a crushing close, and Ohio State is leaving Georgia feeling like they were that close. They played well enough to win the game in so many respects. At the end of it, just didn't quite make enough plays. Final score, Georgia 42, Ohio State 41. So it's going to be a Georgia-TCU national championship game in Los Angeles in just over 1 week's time. Thanks for joining us on Buckeye Breakdown, our instant analysis post-game show. There's plenty to break down. We'll try to keep it fairly brief because we've got so much coverage coming for you here in the coming days. From a game that, honestly, I said pregame I thought was going to be an instant classic. I predicted Ohio State would be on the winning side of it, but it certainly was a game that Ohio State fans will never forget for a lot of reasons. Let's try to be positive at first. C.J. Stroud, we said pregame that he needed to play the kind of game that could help define his legacy as one of the all-time great Ohio State Buckeyes. He's a two-time Heisman finalist. He's done so many things so well throughout his career, but he hadn't won a college football playoff game because the Buckeyes didn't get there last year. And obviously he didn't play in the playoff games the year prior when Justin Fields was here. And so this was his big moment. It was his big stage. What was he going to do? Well, C.J. Stroud, literally put the Buckeyes on his back. 23 of 34 for 348 yards, 4 touchdowns. He did not throw an interception. He regularly ran when he needed to, finished the game with 12 carries for what was 71 yards gained, but because in college football, sacks come off of rushing yardage, so technically he only netted 34 yards. But it was his ability to extend the pocket and obviously make the incredible accurate throws we've seen him make time and time again. But he ran when he needed to run tonight, and too often this year he hasn't had to do that or hasn't chosen to do it when it looked like he could. And I don't know that Georgia really respected his ability to run the football. That was a critical piece of Ohio State's offense. And, I don't know if I necessarily want to pinpoint one or two specific, reasons why this thing went the way it did. Sometimes you just lose. Sometimes you play really well, and it's just not quite enough. Both teams probably come out of this game saying, should have scored several more points. Georgia missed 2 field goals. Ohio State missed 1. The Buckeyes certainly took advantage in the first half with that huge interception from Steel Chambers, and quickly thereafter turned it into a touchdown. But I'm just not sure that it's pertinent tonight to sit here and say that Ohio State didn't do one thing in particular well enough to win this game. And I think C.J. Stroud deserves all the credit in the world for the way he performed, because even though the Buckeyes didn't win, and it is really disappointing to see the season come to a close this way, what more could you ask from the kid? He played his absolute heart out. He was really, really fun to watch. I thought his leadership was tested in a huge way tonight because 2 of his best offensive options rather suddenly became unavailable. Cade Stover was dealing with back spasms. That was the report in the press box, and I believe that was on television as well. Cade left the building and he went to a local hospital for precautionary evaluations. His parents were with him. It didn't sound like it was terribly bad, but bad enough that they wanted him to go get checked out. Cade's a huge part of this offense, and I certainly don't mean any disrespect to Sam Hart or to Joe Royer. There's a reason Cade Stover was the primary tight end all year. He's the real deal. And I just thought Ohio State really missed him when he wasn't on the field. Certainly his leadership off of the actual, hey, I'm out here trying to make plays. And then, look, the Marvin Harrison play is going to be one we're going to talk about for a long time. Ruled targeting on the field at the end of the third quarter and overturned by replay. I suppose it depends on what replay angle you look at. There was certainly an angle I thought the defensive player led with his shoulder, and that maybe it was bordering on an illegal hit, but probably clean. There was another angle that I thought, gosh, that's got to be targeting. If that's not targeting, I don't know what is. And the reality is Marvin Harrison left with a concussion. So how do you get a concussion? How do you get a head injury without taking the kind of blow to the head that he took? It's going to be a play that I think we all look back on for a long time, and certainly a disappointing one. But those were critical points in the game. Early on when you lose Cade Stover, and then late in the third quarter when Marvin Harrison Jr. is having the incredible game that he's having, 10 catches for 106 yards, 2 touchdowns, including on his second touchdown, the one that put Ohio State up 21-7. I mean, that was one of the best plays I've ever seen C.J. Stroud make. He had pressure absolutely everywhere and still found out some way, somehow, to keep the presence of mind to stay composed in the pocket and go make something happen. And Marvin Harrison ran into the corner of the end zone just behind me here, and CJ made an unbelievable play. And I think Georgia fans all of a sudden went, wait a second, 21-7, and we're losing to a team that is making plays like that. How is this going to go? There were a couple different points in the game, including that one that Ohio State had a 2-touchdown lead. And then you get to the end of the third quarter, and it's 38-24. And the idea that Ohio State led 38-24 with this offensive performance, and ultimately it wasn't enough, really hurts. Was the 76-yard touchdown pass the difference in the game? Maybe. I don't know if that's totally fair to say. It's obvious that is part of what folks are going to remember from tonight, and it's certainly heartbreaking to see another really long score like that overwhelm Ohio State defensively. That just can't happen. But there were so many incredible plays in this game on both sides. I just don't know if it's fair to pin victory or defeat on any one play in particular. And I would even go so far as to say, hey, look, go back and watch the press conference that's streamed right here on our YouTube channel. Go back and watch the press conference and see what Kirby Smart had to say, because he was probably about as gracious a winner as I've seen a coach be in a long time. He was very clearly feeling bad for, the way Ohio State must be feeling after playing a game the way they played, good enough to win. C.J. Stroud was, I believe I saw he was only the 4th quarterback against a Kirby Smart-led Georgia team. I apologize for the noise behind me here as they're cleaning up the field and getting ready for a Falcons home game tomorrow. But C.J. Stroud was only the 4th quarterback against a Kirby Smart-led Georgia team to throw for 330 or more and 4 touchdowns in a game, and he did it without turning the ball over. He did it against a defense that everybody has raved about all year and said nobody's beating this team because they play defense too well. Well, Ohio State scored, what was it, 6 touchdowns, right? I mean, he threw for 4, and they had, I guess it was 2 field goals, right? So 41. He had 4 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing score for Mayan Williams, and the 2 field goals. Ruggles kicking from 25 in the third quarter to make it 38. And then the 48-yard field goal late in the game to make it 41. It is what it is. It's really it's a huge bummer. The Buckeyes did not accomplish any of their goals for the second year in a row, and that sounds unbelievably harsh to say it, just like that. They didn't beat Michigan, and they didn't win the national championship. I guess they accomplished one of them. Maybe that's not fair, because the goal is to make the college football playoff, and they did get in. So let me backtrack. They did accomplish one of the goals. But when you play in the college football playoff, you're going to go up against teams that you've got to play a full 60-minute incredible effort against. And when I think about the way Ohio State played tonight, and I try to compare that with some of the other big game performances that we've needed to see from them in recent years, the resiliency that this team showed tonight, frankly, reminded me a lot of what we saw last year in the Rose Bowl. I know it wasn't a playoff game, but I thought Stroud played exceptionally well in that game. It was a different outcome a couple years ago when Ohio State throttled Clemson in the Sugar Bowl, and Justin Fields put on one of the all-time great performances. But I really think this is about as well as we've seen Ohio State play, and frankly, just about as well as you can realistically hope to play. I mean, truly, what more can you expect in a game and in a sport that is so heavily predicated on offense? Both teams had injuries that bugged them. Both teams made incredible plays. I thought it was disappointing that Noah Ruggles, had to try to kick a 50-yard field goal to win the game, but you still had a shot, right? 50 yards is not unmakeable. He just made from 48 earlier in the game. I know 49 was his career long, but 50 is not out of his range. I sure wish it was a little bit closer, and perhaps it could have been a little bit different. Maybe you get a little closer. Ryan Day was asked about that postgame. He said that he called a run on that first down because they had 2 timeouts, and the matchups that they had on the field. He said, I like that matchup, and if you spring it, you could have a 30-yard field goal. He said he doesn't regret calling that play. So, look, it's certainly not the night that we hoped. It's not the night that we envisioned. And for Ohio State's upperclassmen, or for their guys that are going to go to the NFL, it's disappointing that this is going to be the note that they end their career on. But you play college football with the hope of being in a game like this. You want to have this pressure, this stage, this magnitude, and to try to go give it everything you got. And I think Ohio State's feeling really proud of the way that they swung and fought against a team that everybody says is number one in the country. And Ohio State was, about as close as you could come to knocking them off without quite doing it. So disappointing for the Buckeyes not to get it done, but Georgia, a deserving winner tonight. Give me some of the final numbers here before we wrap up on our instant analysis show. Ohio State ran 66 plays for 467 total yards. C.J. Stroud finished the day 23 of 34 for 348 and 4 touchdowns. Leading rusher in the game from a net yardage perspective was Dallin Hayden, 9 carries for 43 yards. We didn't see very much of Mayan Williams. I assume that he was probably still dealing with some of the illness that plagued him this week. But he still ran hard in the couple opportunities he got, including the tough touchdown run that the Buckeyes really needed from him. Xavier Johnson played a great game. And again, I go back and look at critical spots on the field. And again, I'm not trying to be offensive to guys like Joe Royer or Sam Hart or Jaden Ballard, but when you're in a game like this, you want Marvin Harrison on the field. You want Emeka Egbuka and Cade Stover and Travion Henderson on the field. And the Buckeyes were pretty shorthanded in that regard, and that really stinks. But I thought Xavier Johnson played exceptionally hard tonight. He had 6 carries for 28 yards. I thought he blocked really well. And I certainly don't want to go any further without making a comment about the offensive line. Everybody talked coming into this game about how good Georgia's defensive line was in particular. And I actually thought they did a pretty good job of wearing the Buckeyes down as the game went along in that regard. They got better as the game went along. But in that first half, Ohio State's offensive line, I thought, in real time, they really controlled the line of scrimmage nicely. It's not that C.J. Stroud was never under pressure. It's not like they never got a hand on him. In fact, he was sacked 4 times in the game. But he also had a lot of time to throw and for plays to develop. And we're talking about a Georgia secondary here that gave up 500 passing yards to LSU. So you knew coming into the game, hey, if you've got an NFL caliber quarterback and some NFL caliber wide receivers, if you can keep your guy upright, he's going to make plays. And he did. So I really give Ohio State offensive line a ton of credit for the way they played today. They took Jalen Carter not totally out of the game, but I thought they mitigated the impact that I expected he could have tonight, because he really is one of the best players in college football. Two disappointing moments that I guess just is what it is, but it stinks. When Mitch Rossi was called for the illegal motion on a play that, I guess technically if you look at the replay, if he motioned back into the line of scrimmage, yeah, he was coming forward. That's a flag. But it negated what would have been a first down run, and that was really tough to swallow. And ironically, it also involved Mitch Rossi, but it had nothing to do with him. The fake punt. The Buckeyes, they made the right call in the right situation, and it worked. And by a split second, Georgia was awarded a timeout before the play was snapped. And that was a huge bummer, because I thought those were two momentum-changing plays in Ohio State's favor that ultimately went Georgia's way. So I give Stetson Bennett a lot of credit. He's a tough kid. He didn't play anywhere close to his best football tonight that I've seen this year, but I thought he played hard. 23 of 34 for 398, and it's a decent stat line, but 76 of those yards came on one pass. Ohio State gave up a couple of big chunk plays again, including that long run from Kenny McIntosh early in the game when he probably should have scored. And I don't know if the turf monster got him or what the deal was, but that was a 52-yard run. Those were probably the two real big plays. And then Arian Smith also had a really nice night. 3 catches for 129, including a 44-yard after the catch number tonight. So Smith, McIntosh, and Brock Bowers. Statistically, Bowers, I didn't think had a ton of success, but I thought he played really well. It was obviously a bummer for Georgia tonight that Darnell Washington got hurt too. That certainly hurt them, and I wish him well. It sounds like he sprained his ankle. Kirby Smart said after the game that the hope is that he'll be healthy enough to play in the national championship game. So, tip of the cap to the Buckeyes. They played their butts off, and unfortunately tonight, just not quite enough. So the final score here at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, 42-41. The Georgia Bulldogs beat Ohio State in the Peach Bowl. And Ohio State will have to take a deep breath, try to decompress, and figure out how to use this as a building block for the 2023 campaign. And by the way, Ohio State is scheduled to play Georgia in the regular season in 2030. And I don't know if they'll play Georgia between now and then in an expanded playoff, what that could look like. But somewhere in the not too far future, Ohio State will get another crack at the Bulldogs. Big thanks to our team with Buckeyes Now and all the coverage they put on here this week. It was certainly a lot of fun. Andrew Lynn has been writing from back home quite a bit, and Eddie Murata has done a lot of our video production. Appreciate his help as well. Craig Heisen jumped on a couple of our podcasts too. So I'm Brendan Gulick. Thanks for hanging out with us here tonight. We've got plenty more to come. Head over to BuckeyesNow.com for all the latest. Lots of written content from this evening's semifinal. But for now, Happy New Year. Enjoy the celebration with your family and friends. Safe travels if you're on your way home to Columbus or elsewhere across the country. And we'll see you again real soon on Buckeyes Now.